I mean, if you want to simplify it, you've got cool stories, and that's what life's about, is having cool stories. I mean, I've got so many weird stories from dating around Chicago. It's like I could always lean on those when I want a good laugh or a good conversation. But like, it's what I learned from those. Like, don't date sisters, don't date 21-year-olds.
I'm sorry,
like,
don't
all
date.
these kinds
Did you
of
need
things.
to go through that to learn that lesson? Don't date sisters.
Yeah.
I could have told you that.
Well, it wasn't advertised to me that they were sisters.
He had a hypothesis, but it was a scientific method thing.
Yeah,
So
I'm very thorough. I needed to test that.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Menage-A-Pod, the hysterical comedy podcast about sex, dating, and relationships. As always, I'm your co-host TJ, and I am joined by my co-host, best friend ever in the world.
Nice, that's so nice.
I'm feeling really positive today, which we'll get to that in a bit.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, that's a little bit of tease. My best friend, my podcast common law wife. What else are you to me?
God, the best thing that's ever happened to you besides your girlfriend, maybe?
Oh man, I don't know if I want to give you that much praise
That's
quite
really
yet.
fucked up.
I mean, I'm positive, but I'm not delusional.
Already. We're like 2 seconds in. You already get the fucking garbage bell.
All right, well, let's not linger too long because I don't know how many times I can get hit with the garbage bell. What's been going on, Jenny? I know you did some traveling.
I did. I was in Florida visiting my parents, and it was awesome until I got burned on the first day. Literally, like, fell asleep in the sun.
I feel like that's happened every time you've gone.
That's what I said. That's what my dad said. And he was like, Jenna, you think you learn? I was like, I don't, I must have touched the stove a lot as a kid and just like not cared. I don't know what's wrong with me. But I was like molting. Like my skin was like molting for 4 days.
So what you're telling me is you don't learn your lesson and you make the same mistakes over and over again.
Obviously, look at my dating life.
That's where I was headed. I'm glad you picked up on that.
But it was good. It was nice to get some sunshine. I called my mom yesterday and I was like, well, the one good thing is like, now that my face is fully like peeled and healed, it's sort of like I got one of those like
a dermabrasion thing.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like I'm glowing.
I know you had a spa treatment
unintentionally.
That's a way to be positive about it too. I appreciate
you.
it.
God, I am on fire today.
You really are.
You're rubbing off on me.
All right. Well, since we're on that train right now, why don't we jump straight into the topic?
Yeah.
Okay. Today's guest, as always, guess what, guys? Super excited about it.
Oh, you are you?
Yeah.
I've never heard you say that before.
I feel like there's a trend, but I feel each time I'm just more and more excited. And this time, not only am I excited for the guest, I'm excited for the topic. I'm excited for just where my head's at today. So today's guest is Case Kenny. In addition to being a self-proclaimed dude bro guy with perspective, he is also the founder of the daily online publication PRSUIT. He created PRSUIT with the mission of spreading perspective that inspires through original content that's focused on transparency. Over the course of 5 years, he's built a massive social following and an even bigger readership. He's the host and creator of the podcast New Mindset Who Dis. And guys, check it out. I've been binging it lately. And by lately, I mean I listened to 4 episodes this morning.
It's such a great name.
It really is. I think we were talking about this beforehand. Like, the name really sets the stage for what the podcast is. And now that I've definitely, the last couple days, grounded myself in what he's doing, it's just...
Do you have a new mindset?
I do. Can't you tell? Don't you?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just like emanating positivity
really
and growth and
you
wellness
are.
and like just self-actualization.
That's frightening for you.
Okay.
I don't want to know what that looks like.
Well, he is the most positive person we know, and we were really excited to have him on today's show to balance out our world-famous snarkiness.
Yeah, I think
Case,
this is going to be good.
Welcome.
Man,
welcome.
thanks.
We're so excited to
Look
have
at that
you.
hype.
Yeah.
I feel like I walked into a warm blanket of positivity.
You did.
Oh, God, no one ever says that about us. You're
We
high five
almost-
to you, buddy. Woo!
We almost named the podcast that, Warm Blanket of Positivity.
I love it. Yeah.
That sounds dirty.
Okay, so I know we gave a little intro about you, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate.
He's like, I rock. You got
I'm
it.
freaking awesome. I'm very full of myself. I think that's come from the podcast, maybe. Yeah, no, I mean, I do the podcast twice a week, New Mindset Who Dis. Yeah, I think the name's clever. We relate to the kids. It kind of explains what I'm all
The
about.
kids. How old are you?
know.
Do you want to tell our audience?
I turn 31 next week.
Okay.
Oh,
all
happy
right.
early birthday.
Thanks.
This is like our second tween in the last 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So I've been wrestling with that, No, so I do the podcast, but I've always been like a writer and pretty voracious reader, and I started PRSUIT, which is a email, and people were like, "Yo, you should start a podcast." And I was like, "I hate the sound of my voice," but people were like, "You should do it anyway," and then I did. And
You have a good
people were
voice.
like,
It's a good podcast.
Yeah, that's pretty legit. So
Yeah.
well, I edit it pretty heavily. So,
Same.
You're like,
Same.
I
it's like
can
a
actually
filter.
dub it
It's like
over.
an
It's
Instagram
not
filter,
even
yeah.
my voice.
Yeah, I hire a guy. He
Yeah.
decided to do show cards, and he just reads it. It takes forever. It takes forever to record.
You're really an innovator. I see that.
Yeah, I do. I'm doing things that no one thinks about. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I have a lot of feelings, so I share them on the podcast, and people seem to relate. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
you do have a lot of feelings. I have a lot of feelings. That's why we started this podcast. And because I was tired of TJ was just tired of being the only person I talked to about my bad dates, and so he was like, "We got to start.
You got to get the burden off yourself."
Yeah,
you're right.
He's
I was
share
really
it with
shifting
millions
it.
of people.
Share it with other people.
Like, why should I really carry this all on my own when I can pass it to everybody else?
There you go. Sharing's caring there, actually.
Well, we're really excited to have you on
thank you.
To talk about today's topic. So we've kind of flirted with this back and forth on the show a couple of times. It's come up in, passing conversations with other guests, but it's such an important topic and kind of near and dear to me and probably to you too.
Absolutely.
I think we've
especially today.
Yeah. Why today?
I'm feeling more positive in general about things.
Oh, okay. I was like, what did you do? What are you not telling me?
I have an announcement.
But since it's constantly recurring in our episodes, we thought it would make a great topic for Case to talk about and bring his positive spin to it. It's the idea of being happy with who you are after, maybe getting out of a relationship. We've talked about this. Getting out of my marriage, I was really, I don't know. I kind of lost who I was for a little bit there. And he was fine. He was nice. He was a good husband. Sort of. I know that's not very positive, is it? But he didn't make me feel good about myself. I didn't feel funny. He never laughed at my jokes. He always thought he was the smartest guy in the room, never made me feel very smart. It's kind of like you.
I was
oh
gonna
my
say,
God, it's you.
Would it make me an
haven't
asshole if I
broken
told you
any
just to try harder?
Oh my God, it's you. I thought I made so much progress in therapy, but fuck, that was the realization right there.
You've made no attempt to propose to me, though, so I think we're safe.
This is true. Anyway, getting out of that, it was like this whole idea of finding myself again and kind of coming back into my own and being happy with who I am, because I think the only way to have a healthy relationship moving forward is to love yourself first. That sounds so corny, but it's true per my therapist. So anyway, so that's kind of what we wanted to talk to you about today a little bit, because I know the couple relationship episodes that you've done on your podcast, there was two?
Two.
Yeah.
Both amazing.
They were so
Two of
good.
the four I listened to this morning.
I waited 68 episodes so I could do it for episode 69. So I was itching to do one, and I was like, I gotta wait for the right moment.
As a man-child myself, I appreciate the hustle.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I think you'd be a really great person to talk to about this just based on some of the stuff that we heard on your podcast. Why don't we just get into it, right?
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. A couple of the topics I kind of wanted to talk to you about that I noticed that you had covered. You talked a little bit about vulnerability and how important that is. I'm just going to list them for you, and then we could talk about them however you want. Does that work for you? You talked about self-discovery, boundaries, insecurities.
Insecurities, that was the big one.
That was a big one. And all of those things are so, what's the word I'm looking for?
Important?
Well, important, but
essential?
Yeah.
I feel like none of the growth that you need to make, you can really make without these, right?
Oh my God, that was so deep of you this morning.
And I even did my low and slow voice.
You did low and slow.
It was half thoughtful, half sexy.
Yeah. Well done. Shout out to Sophia. Anyway, so do you want to kind of give us your point of view on this?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I have a lot of feelings. They're not always right. I'm definitely not an expert.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my growth over the past couple of years has been derivative of just doing cool shit for myself and just being selfish. And I think a big thing that I've learned from that is this aspect of insecurities. I look at any relationship I've been in, the long ones. I've been in 3 or 4 relationships that were a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then I look at some of the short ones, and they all ended because of insecurities on either end. And I think that's probably a common theme with most people. And I think in life, whatever insecurities you continue to hold on to are the ones that you're going to find in other people. And it's that idea, whatever they say of you can't be two halves looking for each other. You got to be two full people. Yeah. And there was another analogy I saw this morning. It was you can't be walking around the LAX airport looking for someone in Hawaii. You've got to be where you want to be to meet the kind of person you want, right? So you got to be in Hawaii to meet the person in Hawaii. And it's the same idea. It's if you don't work on your own insecurities now, you're going to find someone with the same ones, and then it's just going to exacerbate and it's going to be a nightmare. Yeah. So I'm all about addressing those as soon as you can. And I think the best way to do that, and I talked about it in episode 69, which was this idea of the hoe phase, which you could take any which way. But to me, it's all about just experience and perspective. The the more people you date, the more things you do, the more people you talk to, like that's going to help you address those kinds of things. Otherwise, you can sit in your apartment and scroll through Instagram and listen to podcasts, and like that's great, but unless you like you're living it, like you're never going to address those things.
I think insecurities, well, I mean, I've got a lot of them.
I certainly do.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I'd love people to believe that I have like infinite swagger.
Well, I mean, you do sometimes. That's the thing with insecurities, right? Like they rear their ugly head when you least expect it. I think, how do you overcome something like that? Like, how do you overcome?
I don't think you do, honestly. And I like to that point, like anyone asks me what I'm insecure about, I'll be like, I'm not a good swimmer. Like I just like to lie to myself a lot because it's easier and it's funny and it's whatever. I mean, I don't think you overcome insecurities. I don't know what that really looks like. I think you just come to accept them, and that's the biggest thing. There's all kinds of things about myself that annoy people, that annoy myself, and instead of being like, oh, you need, like, I just like, oh, it's me, it's whatever. Yeah. And like, I think if you don't see it as something to be embarrassed about, or that you're falling behind because you haven't worked on it or whatever, then I think you're in a much better place. Can
I just tell you what you're probably not insecure about?
What's that?
Those arms.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, I can't even concentrate on what you're saying right now. I'm sorry. Your shirt is so tight. I like love it. Why don't you wear stuff like this?
Because my body fat is like at least double his.
Well, I banged out 100 push-ups in your elevator.
You gotta
go.
It goes a long ride up. You gotta get the pump. I get it.
I say it's the slowest elevator in Chicago.
Yeah, I asked your door guy to spot me. You didn't know what I was talking about. But, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go on.
I just something I was listening to this morning in your one episode, you spoke about, like, to your point you just said with the shine. There was something you had seen on Instagram about
glitter.
Yeah, that was it. I really appreciated that, because you ended up talking about how in a moment, whether you're too loud or too yourself or just too much, too extra, that's just maybe not right for the moment, but still you should be exposing yourself and being embarrassed and awkward and like really embracing that as a way of kind of confronting those insecurities.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's like a really good way to do it. Like I think in that episode, I talked about the idea that, embarrassing yourself, being awkward, being uncomfortable is like a short-term pain, but long-term gain. I really, really believe that, because in the long run, like what makes you is the perspectives you have, the things you experience. Like that's it. What else could there be? And the more you're willing to put yourselves in scenarios where you're uncomfortable, it's going to suck. It's going to be awkward. But long term, like, you don't have those questions. You don't have regret. Like, I think that's what it's all about. I am more than willing to embarrass myself, so much more now than I was, 4 or 5 years ago, because I realized that. Before, I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, that sounds uncomfortable. People are going to be looking at me. And now I'm like, fuck it. I'll just do it.
Well, I think even though that relationship wasn't, or that episode wasn't inherently a relationship episode, that type of self-discovery through opening yourself up to embarrassment and just being willing to like be yourself, that's dating massively valuable in dating and relationships, because if you can put yourself out on that limb and just really, like, although this is the most cliche thing ever, live your best life, be the best version of yourself, then that's just going to make it that much more likely that you're making like meaningful connections.
Yeah, that's so true. Here's the thing, though. I think this actually leads into the topic of vulnerability, because in order to put all your flaws out there to somebody that you want to like you back, you have to actually be vulnerable. And that is a hard thing for me. I've been working on it in therapy, everyone, for the last year and a half, maybe. I'm getting better. I'm better. We've had some
we've made some steps.
We have made some big strides in our friendship.
I wish you could see my face right now, guys.
It's less in my friendships and more in like relationships because of battle scars from my marriage, really. So like, there are parts of me that, like I said, like there are parts of me that I always thought were great that he didn't think were great. And then I kind of went back into my shell a little bit. So me then coming out of it and being vulnerable with people and opening up is really hard to do. But I feel like someone actually just said this to me the other day. They're like, you've been talking more about your life a little bit more on the podcast than I did when we first started, like, which I also think, again, is like opening up and
you're
being
getting
vulnerable,
comfortable,
right?
and that's making you able to be vulnerable.
Exactly. And I'm able to like show parts of myself that I maybe wasn't comfortable doing before.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what's your experience with that? I mean, I don't know your dating experience. Maybe we should.
You want a quick recap?
Yeah,
let's
give
hear
me
it.
the rundown.
I mean, so I'm 31 in a couple days. Throughout my 20s, always had a girlfriend. Dated one for 3 years, a year, 2 years, 2 years. But I've been single for the past year, which has been really different. So pretty simple in that. I will say, I joked in the beginning that I'm really full of myself, but I think like vulnerability and being full of yourself go hand in hand, as contrasting as they sound. I think most people who are full of themselves are like hiding something, and like they're putting on this front so that they don't
Oh my!
have to.
You didn't see it, but TJ just raised his
raise.
hand. That's actually true. I would say that about you. Sorry,
Appreciate
I love
it.
you, mean it.
But
Go on.
I think you could do it in like a real way. I think like, and I'm talking about like single people in their 20s or early 30s, right? Where in my opinion, there's no pressure to get married or have kids. I know that's not universally true, but I think that's the case. It's like the reason that I think I can be more vulnerable with people that I date or just in general is because I've taken the time to find things that make me full of myself, that offer fulfillment. Like if the only thing in the world that's going to make you happy right now is to have a relationship, I think you're going to set yourself up for a bit of failure.
Right.
And it's going to be really tough.
Yeah.
Because that's all you're aiming for. But for me, it's like, and again, this I sound like a little bit of a robot, but like I can go on a date, and if they're like, I don't like you, it's like it's no problem for me because I can go right back to things that offer a lot of fulfillment in life, which are my writing and my podcast and my friends and like fitness and all that kind of thing, and that's great.
Elevator push-ups.
Elevator push-ups.
Yeah, you guys don't know, but he's gonna. It's the new CrossFit craze, and Case is gonna be the face of it.
Exactly. Yeah, but like I've found these things, and I think when I have those to fall back on, and I'm not only aiming to find a relationship right now, then I could be more vulnerable because the downside to that is, okay, someone doesn't like me, and I go right back to what I'm fulfilled with.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the part of the equation that people miss. And I know it's cliche to say, you got to find something that makes you happy. But you really do. Otherwise, you're just going to be going in circles with this pressure on yourself that I think is unwarranted. And now that I'm 31, I'm like, I mean, I should probably find someone. But like, it's like, to be honest,
really.
I'm fine.
You got to get the
You've
first
got
try out of the
time.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. I mean, but so I mean, I think you've got to try to take that pressure off yourself, find something else to find fulfillment in, and then you could eventually like, be a little bit more aggressive with trying to find someone.
Well, in one of your relationship episodes, you talked about how much you're bothered by people who really kind of focus on and stress about being single. When it's like oh, I'm single, it's so horrible, it's so horrible. And I know you just said you've been single in the last year, and since we're talking a little bit about that self-discovery, and do you think this last year of being single and focusing more on the things that you are passionate about in your career and your various pursuits, do you think that that's like making you more prepared?
Sorry.
Pursuits.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry.
what it is.
I got you. Go on.
Wordplay.
Yeah. Do you think that's kind of when you are, do you think this is kind of preparing you even more so than maybe you already are for when you do meet that person?
100%.
That's a good question, buddy.
That's a heck of a question. I mean, I will say being single is pretty freaking awesome. And like, I've gotten so accustomed to just doing whatever I want. I'm like really like lazy now. Like someone will text me, like, hey, we should go out for drinks. I'm like, wait, you want me to leave my apartment and like come hang out with you?
You're like, do I have to
and,
put
like,
on pants?
Shower and like all this stuff?
Yeah.
And, like, I have to do push-ups. I have this whole routine I got to do now. So
where's the closest elevator?
I need to look vascular when I go out.
you want me to go outside without a pump? What are you, insane? So I will say, I mean, it is a bit of a slippery slope. I like find myself just wanting to like sit on my couch, Netflix or whatever. But I mean, I think absolutely. I think with a mentality of being uncomfortable and combine that with no pressure, like being single and focusing on cool shit absolutely prepares you for a relationship in the future. But I will say, like, I don't think you should be like black and white, like 100% single for a year and then all of a sudden to start dating. I think you need to date periodically because the only way you're going to find out what you like or don't like is to date. Otherwise, your input is that of Instagram, which I think is just so full of shit, to be honest. Like all the quotes that are like pumping you up that you need to find a guy who ejaculates champagne and makes you shake like a washing machine. Like that was the one I mentioned in episode 69.
I'm not
like,
mad about that.
But I think that's good. But
is that a thing?
Because
I want that.
The rest of it was like, otherwise, like men are totally replaceable. I was like, okay, well, that's a cool. I love the self-affirmation, but it's like, okay, well, maybe you don't like champagne, maybe you want apple juice, I don't know, like whatever, like you have to compare
what are
it
you,
to
10?
I love apple juice and applesauce.
Okay.
I'm freaking weird.
All right.
Is that weird? I'm a fan myself.
You are?
Applesauce?
I don't like
Of
applesauce.
course.
I don't like the consistency of it.
No, it's a consistency. You put it on pizza. It's like a whole.
What? You put it on pizza? Get out of my house.
I don't want to be too vulnerable right now. But
That's pretty vulnerable.
You put it on pizza?
If the success, if the key to a podcast success is the vulnerability of the host and guest, you just divulging that you put
you nailed
applesauce
it.
on
I've got a lot
pizza.
more.
You
Yeah.
nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, like if you're just taking like those kinds of things and like that, all of a sudden that becomes your checklist for what you want in someone. I think you're setting yourself up for failure because it's not your own. So you need as much as I am increasingly lazy, like you need to date more or at least meet new people.
Well, that's, I think, the hard part. I mean, TJ's in a relationship now, but he had a long period of time where he was definitely not in a relationship.
I had a nice run.
Yep, he had a good run.
Definitely not.
So I feel like you can understand this, but like at a certain point, well, maybe not for you, but for me, because I date a lot, let's be honest, but not as much as you did.
Agreed.
Can we agree? Okay.
I tend to stay reasonably quiet on this topic.
Strong numbers.
I feel like there came a point though where I just got so tired of doing it because it was a grind, to be perfectly honest, which is a terrible way to look at dating. But from one salesperson to another, it's a numbers game, right? So it's like, how many people can you go out with? And but I saw it as a lot of them. But I saw it as like sort of, this is such a fucked up thing to say, but like almost like gathering intel, right? Of like taking what I like from this person and thinking like, okay, I don't know, I need someone who's really funny. And then he can be also really smart, but he doesn't have to be like necessarily like have an MBA or all these other things that maybe I would have cared about more prior to my marriage.
So you heard it first, poor guys, no shot.
I said he doesn't have to have an MBA. He could be poor. Well, maybe not poor. Let's be honest.
Money.
You can have a solid job that makes you happy. How's
there you
that?
go.
That's good.
Happiness
right?
is key.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Man. God, you're
and
fucking nailing it
the
today.
pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
So what you're saying, Jenna, it's kind of like taking the bits and pieces from these guys you date and then like creating like the avatar of what your like idealized partner would look like.
That's exactly what I'm saying. God, you're so smart.
It's like customizing your car.
Yeah, exactly.
It's perfect.
I like it.
Well, so we already just touched on self-discovery.
We did.
So we can skip that one.
Why don't we
have a question?
So you talked about your hoe phase. You brought that up. Yeah. Why don't you just tell us a little bit more about like why that's so important and what that means, how like you'll regret it, and just the way you think about that.
Wait, before you say this, I actually want to preface this with like, I don't mind that word hoe. I don't mind the word slut. I don't mind those words. I actually find them to be very like powerful. They should be very empowering as a woman. You should take them back. So when he says this, audience, we don't mean it in a negative way.
Yes,
obviously.
as always,
he's the positivity king.
Not only is he the positivity king, as always, Menage-A-Pod, the most sex positive podcast.
Very much so. Yes.
Sex positive and family friendly. Hoe phase. Yeah. I mean, so like the whole thing with like my writing and the podcast and everything was this idea of perspective and experience. Like that was my whole like content model, to be boring. But like personally, like I believe so firmly in that. Like the only perspective that matters in life is that you experience yourself. Like you can read all the books, listen to all the podcasts, watch all the movies you want, but that's not your perspective. That's someone else. And I think the only way to become centered, full, whatever you want to call it, is to do more things. And that's not a earth-shattering concept, but I think when it comes to dating, there's really no better way to say it than a hoe phase. Hoe phase meaning dating around, hooking up, whatever you want to call it, a combination of the two. And like for me, that's like I've lived this past year where I date exclusively from dating apps and Instagram. Like I'm a digital first person.
You date from Instagram?
Oh,
God,
yeah.
You probably get so many DM slides.
So many fucking. I can imagine.
I do. Yeah, and it's great. But like, if anyone asks for my number, I like, generally give it out. Like, I've had people fly into Chicago to meet me. Like, I've met people on the street and like,
I've had people fly in to meet me too. Yeah,
it's common, right?
What the fuck, man? All right.
But I do that for that reason. Like, that might sound. Now I'm a little bit more protective of my time because I'm literally wasting my time and I shouldn't do that. But that's because I so firmly believe in like the power of that experience. Like that's why I'm willing to go on anyone's podcast, meet anyone, do anything, fly anywhere to do things. And it's because of that idea of the hoe phase, which is I think you've got to get more numbers. You got to get your numbers up.
Yeah.
If you're going to find someone that matters to you. I mean, we've just talked about this. But I think that's literally it.
Yeah. And also though, like what you were saying about like giving out your number, like accepting dates. I think I just had this conversation with a friend the other night. We were talking about my current dating situation, and there's someone in my world who's a lot younger than I am. So he's like a good almost 10 years younger than I am, which is a big swing
like
for
15?
me. Yeah, he's like 15.
Creepy.
He's not even legal. It's super uncomfortable. We might have to edit that out because I don't want to get arrested. Anyway, my friend, it was like guy friend actually, because men do it all the time, right? Like, what's the youngest you've dated?
I mean, at my current age, I've dated someone who was 13 years younger than me.
Yeah. What about you? Men do it all the time.
21.
Yeah. See,
When
so
I'm
like
30.
a 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like a 10 years thing, 9 years thing.
Kudos, sir.
Yeah. Well done. But also
It was
at the
good.
same
It was good
time,
for an hour. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, what does she have to offer you at 21? Her body, besides her body. Sorry, that's so not on brand for you. I'm so sorry. Case's audience, you have to forgive him. He didn't say it. I said it. Anyway, the point of that is that my friend that I was talking to about this guy, he just laughed and he was like, well, first of all, men do it all the time. Second of all, it's a great story. So here you are collecting these moments, right? Like these little mini moments. And they...
Why has it got to be a mini moment? I think the
It definitely
28-year-old's going to be
wasn't a
offended
mini
by that.
moment. No, it definitely wasn't.
Hey, what's mini about it? Okay, got it.
Absolutely nothing, if we're being honest. So... Sorry, you asked. So I think there's something really nice about that, and kind of going back to what you were saying about this hoe phase, and kind of like figuring out what you want and like having all these experiences. I think there's something nice about not about sort of saying yes to everything. And I don't mean that in like a slutty way. I just mean it in like an experience way, right?
Yeah.
Like you meeting these people that like slide into your DMs or fly into Chicago for you. I mean, that's kind of cool. And those are fun stories to tell. And it also kind of gives you, I don't know, it gives you, I don't know, stories.
Perspective.
Yeah. Perspective.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, if you want
Yeah.
to simplify it, you've got cool stories, and that's what life's about, is having
Yeah.
cool stories. I mean, I've got so many weird stories from dating around Chicago. It's like I could always lean on those when I want a good laugh or a good conversation, but like it's what I learned from those, like don't date sisters, don't date 21-year-olds.
I'm sorry,
like
don't
all
date
these kinds
Did you
of
need to
things.
go through that to learn that lesson? Don't date sisters?
Yeah.
I could have told you that.
Well, it wasn't advertised to
he-
me that they were sisters.
He had a hypothesis, but it was a scientific method thing.
Yeah,
So we had to check it out.
I'm very thorough. I needed to test
Right.
that. But it's things like that. Like Chicago's also a very freaking small city, so you're gonna run
Yeah.
into all kinds of interesting scenarios.
Yeah.
It's so annoying to me. But yeah, I mean, there's stories. That's all it is. You want to call it perspective. You want to get all high and mighty and talk about its experience and its mindset or whatever. Or you just want to say you need more stories so that when you're in your 70s, you can look back and be like, oh, I lived.
You lived.
Yeah.
Well, not
Yeah.
only that, I think those experiences and taking those chances and meeting those people and doing those things, that truly shapes who you are. And even if you don't look at an individual experience or a series of experiences as extremely positive or they didn't meet your expectation, it's still something that exposed you to someone else's life, someone else's experience, someone else's mindset. And maybe that was a mindset that you hadn't previously been exposed to. And then it just kind of shapes who you are and the way you see others.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt about you after I met you.
Yeah, I open a lot of eyes. People meet me and like hour later, they're like, oh, okay.
I was like, oh, so this is what I don't want to date. I got it. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
This is the opposite of what I
Yeah.
want. I mean,
Although, as we established in the beginning, apparently it is. It's very on brand for me.
I mean, I think also like I look at my life and I think I'm just very trusting that like time's going to take care of everything. So you can date around, you can have stories that are good and bad, and you can look at those bad stories and be like, man, I really fucked up. Like I let that person go, or like I wasn't my best self and they didn't like me or whatever. Or you can look at it as be like, it's okay. Like everything's going to work out. Mm-hmm. That's my mentality. Clearly I'm Mr. Positivity, but like I literally believe that. I look at like the dating issues I had a year ago versus now, and they're not there. Like a year takes care of everything. I really do believe that time is like our greatest asset, both in the moment and long term. And like I think if you just have the mentality that, okay, that didn't work out, on to the next, instead of being like, man, I'm gonna die alone, like being single is the worst. Like I think you're gonna set yourself up to be a lot happier in the moment while you work towards finding someone that makes sense for you.
Right. And I think that if you focus on when you have an experience that isn't necessarily like positive, you can hold on to that and you can focus on the negative thing that it brought into your life. Or you can just, okay, this didn't work out, I'm on to the next thing. And
you start a podcast with them.
Exactly. And if you don't carry that forward, I mean, you carry the lessons forward, but don't carry like the grudge or the animosity or any of that. It just, again, shapes your perspective.
Yeah.
You're so wise today. I'm like staring at you
For
because I don't even
your
know.
podcast,
Honestly,
like, got
that's
me
all
elevated.
you need. God, you guys, that is probably the ringing endorsement you need.
That's it.
If it turns TJ, I haven't touched this garbage bell in I don't know how long. Like since
I am the
beginning of
face
episode.
of like anxious skepticism, and everything is like dreary and dark. And you have really like
Wow.
I know.
That is quite the seal of approval.
I was on the phone this morning with Jen. I'm like, I'm ready. Like, let's do this.
It was
like,
very obnoxious. It was very obnoxious. I was very tired.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
He woke me up. It was a whole thing. The other one I wanted to actually touch on that you had mentioned in one of your episodes was the whole like fuck yes or fuck no, like don't live in the gray.
Yeah.
And pursue people intentionally, which I think we kind of touched on. Bobby on the poly episode mentioned dating, right? So like when you're dating, you should date intentionally. And his whole view on it was, obviously from a poly perspective, like when you're on these apps, you're looking through these profiles, and you really should like weed out people. If your intention is to date somebody, you should really like read them and not just swipe on the hot
heavily
people.
Filtering not just swiping on everyone and giving it all a shot.
Yeah. So it's like very black and white. So it kind of feels, and like, so his whole point was like, you have to pursue these people intentionally. And it kind of reminded me of what you were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I think dating's all about trusting your gut and being intentional. Like I'm on the dating apps. I just kind of dick around a little bit. I'm on
app of choice.
Raya.
Okay.
Raya?
Yes.
I like Raya just because like
nobody who's listening to this is on Raya.
No.
Probably not.
Probably not.
We'll see. Maybe.
I mean, Raya's cool because people who are on there for the most part are like doing something cool, or they're really hot and have a lot of followers, whatever. Either way, like they have some kind of influence and they're doing cool things. Like to me, that's really important in someone that I date, that they have like a passion or some kind of creative outlet. So like that's why like I don't mess around with Tinder or Bumble for the most part, just because I think most people there are just swiping.
That's exactly
so like
what they're doing.
Okay, so like I can narrow it down there at least. So it's a little bit more intentional, and then from there, I mean, I am big on trusting your gut, but your gut can be incredibly confusing because like, how do you know if it's actually you or just your thoughts or like someone else's? Like, I don't really know, but I think again, you're not going to know what's in your gut unless you have more perspectives, and the only way to get more perspectives is to date more. So like it goes all around for me. Mm-hmm. I used like, for some reason when I used to date, it was like always the first girl that I met and then we would just date. And to me, it was like, okay, well, that's my perspective. It feels right, so I'm just going to rock it. But now it's like I've filled my gut with so much more perspective. I'm like, okay, now I can choose from these experiences to make a better, more well-rounded opinion of what I want. And like that's led me, I think, to understanding that right now the better thing is to be single. And again, I think, you know, I have a lot of cool shit going on for me, so I have things to lean back on. But at its core, it's like I can look myself in the mirror now and be like, okay, does this feel right? No. Okay, then forget about it. There's no pressure to be like, well, it feels half right, so why don't we go for it? That's the gray, and that's how I think you end up with regret. Obviously, I've never been married. My parents aren't divorced. I've never been through a divorce or anything myself. But like, I think my biggest fear is to be 50 and then get divorced, or 50 and then have some big looming regret in my life. And I talk a lot about that. It's the whole reason I do the podcast and the writing, is to help people and myself minimize regret in their life, whether that's career or personal or dating. I think the key solution to that is making more fuck yes or fuck no decisions, which are ones that aren't in the gray. And the only way to come to that is to have more perspective, is to have dated more people, to understand what you like and what you don't like, and to not accept a scenario where it's like, okay, this kind of works. I think there's enough people, there's enough time in the world to find someone that's fuck yes. I clearly haven't found that person, but I believe, again, back to my previous point, that I think I will find it. And I think that's the mentality to have. Yeah. And that's the one I have right now. And I think I'll have that mentality for quite some time. It's
a good mentality to have.
I think so. It makes me happy. Otherwise, I think I would be kind of miserable. Right. I think it's really easy to like be lonely, and all your homies are getting married. I'm at the age where everyone's married, all my friends now.
Wait till they have kids.
That's coming too. One, I'm holding babies now. I'm trying to have conversations with babies. Like, hey, how are you? Like, I don't know what to do.
Like, what do you do for a living?
Like, how are your taxes? Like stuff like that. So it's all like new, I suppose. But like that hasn't changed the pressure that I put on myself, because again, I believe that it's what will be, and I firmly believe that I could find that fuck yes or fuck no scenario. Sure. Right now, it's a lot of fuck no's, which is fine. We can find yes. Well,
I feel like that's very in line. And this is awesome to hear you, because I feel like you talking about your personal experience is really true to the types of things that you say on your podcast. And it comes off as obviously very authentic. and saying, I listened to one of the relationship episodes, obviously, as I've now mentioned like 800 times. You talked about not compromising, not necessarily not compromising on the things that relationships tend to recall for, but just not compromising like the core things of yourself and not like accepting less than you feel like you are and you need. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes. I think we all need to be a little bit full of ourselves. I did an episode on big dick energy. It's the same idea. Like
fat dick spirit.
Did you see that meme that was going around? Yeah. What was? Oh God, we talk about this every time. Yeah. It was like a mom got it wrong and she wanted to quote it and she said fat dick spirit.
Sounds like something my mom would say. I don't think my mom listened to that episode. She wouldn't like me saying that.
No.
But
your mom gonna listen to this episode?
We'll send her the link.
I'll send her this episode.
Okay. She's gonna be like, that Jenna girl, she swears too much.
She'll be like, you're out dating. And she sent me like a big pack of condoms in college.
She did?
Probably send
That's
me another
awesome.
one after listening to this. Yeah, so I think you need to be a little bit full of yourself, and people. That's why like I'm fine with calling myself a dude bro guy because that's what I am. I think I could definitely be a tool. I like going to the club. I like Snapchatting bottle service. Like I still do lots of douchey things.
Sure,
but like that's just who I am.
Own
and
it.
Part of that brand or whatever you want to call it, part of Case Kenny is being a little bit full of yourself. But I think in a genuine way that's led me to situations where I don't compromise myself. Big dick energy is the same concept that, you have to create something in your life, whether that's something like a podcast or a blog or a business, or you just create a code of values that you live by, one of which is doing things for yourself, being selfish and not compromising because you have some bullshit pressure on yourself that you've put there or your parents have put there or someone else has put there. Like, I think if you have that mentality and not like in a bitchy way that you deserve better or that, there's the grass is always greener or that you shouldn't, if you're in a relationship, you shouldn't compromise their needs and their wants. I'm talking about like before you get to that point, it's like, is this fuck yes or fuck no? And if it's somewhere in between, then you're kind of compromising yourself. But I really do stand by that. And people always joke like that I am full of myself and that they don't like to give me compliments because it'll go to my head or anything.
I say that to you all the time.
Okay, so hold on. I've got something for you. So usually in the week leading up to when we record, I'm usually interacting with a lot of our listeners and our fans on social media and like letting people know who we're going to be recording with and like being like, hey, check this guy out. So I did that quite a bit with you this week. And most of these were women, and the feedback was generally about how jacked you are. And that, oh yeah, I heard a lot of that. Like this morning, I got blown up by like 5 women who were very excited to hear what you have to say.
That's great. Wow.
So more compliments
Humbled, coming. Honored. Yeah, those elevator push-ups are pulling off. Yeah, but I mean, that's all I have to say about that. I mean, that's literally it. I think there's nothing wrong with being full of yourself. I think it's such people think it's such a negative value nowadays to be full of yourself, to have a little bit of swag, a chip on your shoulder, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's essential to living a life that you want. Otherwise, you're going to turn 60 and you're going to be like, I did all these things that I didn't do for myself because I was trying to check this box, fit that mold, giving in this pressure.
Well, and honestly, if you are a little full of yourself and like, I mean, I think a lot of high achievers and people who really get what they want out of life are. And when you get to that, it doesn't mean that you aren't like living a life of service and helping others and doing things to live like a good, well-rounded life. You can be full of yourself and still be a great person. So it's important to, I think, have that delineation.
Yeah, I think honestly, all it is the difference between wanting to impress and please other people and just being confident in what you have to offer. I give the example all the time that, most people walk into a room of people and they're like, oh, I hope these people like me. Whereas the better mindset, I think, is I wonder if I'll like them. And it's the same.
I like that.
The same concept for dating. It's like when I go to a date, it's not like, oh boy, I hope I got these questions and I hope this goes well and that they think I'm charming and whatever. Whereas it's the flip side. It's like, I wonder if I'm going to like this person. I think that's the mentality to go. Not because you think you're better than them.
Just because you value yourself.
You owe it to yourself.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that can be applied, obviously. I know you don't typically talk about dating on your podcast, but obviously can be applied across other things like, work probably. Like as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, that's the way I go into interviews, which sounds counterintuitive, but I think like you have me in this room because you found me, typically is how that, I mean, you know how that industry is. So you found me. And so I'm sitting here because you wanted me for some reason. So now I almost like turn the interviews around, right? Like I walk in thinking like I already have the job.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely, whether it's a job interview or it's a date or it's just a interpersonal, whatever, the people who choose to be around you, or even if you just are passing in a chance, as long as you value yourself and what your true self is, what you need from the experiences you have in the day, that's empowering. And it does, I don't want to say the upper hand, you don't need to have the upper hand, but it's a good feeling to know that when you look at, just to Case's point, that you see it as something like you're not concerned about what they think about you. It's the other way around.
Yeah, I think like within that too, like the biggest thing that I think can really free you from putting pressure on yourself is to stop overthinking. Like I have some beef with...
I'm so bad at that, aren't I?
Everyone does. It's not like a flaw, but I see like there's a lot of Instagram accounts and podcasts where it's like they ask all these questions. Like, oh, what does it mean if he doesn't text you in 3 days? Like, what does it mean if he doesn't want to meet your parents? Like all these kind of things. And it's like, okay, those are interesting questions to ask yourself. But I honestly try not to involve myself in that kind of circular thinking. It's like, if you are full of yourself in the right way and you're centered and you know what you want and you don't make compromises, like those kinds of questions are irrelevant because, okay, I wonder why he hasn't texted me in 3 days. All right, why don't you text him and ask him? Just get what you want. Like that's I think the biggest mentality. But when people start overthinking like the littlest things, like what does it mean if, or should I do that? Like,
oh, he's watched 6 straight of my Instagram stories, but he won't respond to my text. What's that mean?
Exactly.
Well, because because dating sometimes can be a game, right? Like there's sort of like you shouldn't. Well, here's the thing. At my age, right? Like in my 30s, I don't play those games anymore. Oh, I used to. I used to call TJ and I was like, I don't understand. I haven't exactly what you said. Like I haven't heard from him in 3 days. And I'll sit here and analyze it, but now it's funny. Well, now I just don't have the time for it. Like I don't have the headspace to give it anymore. So it's like, you know, if you like me, you like me. That's great. If you don't, cool. But I think a lot of people do that. I think that's hard. I think you have to be really confident to not play into that game, right? Of like, should I text him first? Should he text me? You know, all that kind of shit.
At the end of that is just people don't want to be embarrassed. People don't want to be rejected.
Well,
But I think to my earlier point, like you've got to address that first. And if you can get past that, then it becomes a lot easier. But I mean, you have to ask for what you want, whether it's men or women or all these gender roles or whatever. Like, I don't think there's any expectation that one person should necessarily take the lead. In my opinion, like if you're a girl, I think you just freaking ask. Like you ask for what you want.
Yeah.
Like I've proven that, like not even in relationships. Like the other day, like since we're on the podcast, I emailed iHeartRadio. I was like, hey, I would love to be in your top 10. Can you put me there? They're like, sure. And they just put me there. It's the same idea.
TJ.
You guys should take notes. It's the same idea in relationships. Like, why not just ask for what you want? If the answer is no, then it's no. Happen? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
But again, people would be like, I care, because that's awkward. But if you have the things that we've just been talking about for the past 20 minutes, then you really won't. And then you'll just continue to ask where you want until you find that person who's like, yes. And then you're okay. And then you just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Case, thank you so much for coming on to our humble little show. We appreciate you stopping by.
I appreciate it.
Question.
Oh,
before you wrap it.
So we have a thing we do where we like to ask our guests if they could tell us just a story they have about like either the worst or most embarrassing date they've ever been on.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've been on quite a few.
I've been on some interesting dates for sure. Yeah. I mean, I was on one several months back. Great girl, nice girl, young girl.
I think 21 young?
Yes, 21.
Say no more.
Blah, 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 blah story. I mean, we went out on a date, and then at some point in the drinks, she was like, hey, like there's this guy behind me who used to date my friend. Like, I'm going to go get in a fight with him. Like, excuse me? What?
Stop.
So she had some reasons behind it, like he like screwed her over or something. But anyway, I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and then I went to the bathroom, and then I came back, and she was in this guy's grill, and then I walked up. She was like, hey, this is Case, my boyfriend.
No.
And, like, threw me into this whole scenario where I was involved. Anyway, I like de-escalated, but I've never been on a first date before where there was like an altercation with someone else during the
and called you her
date.
boyfriend.
Right. I was like, wow,
that's what got me.
We didn't even have that
Whoa.
conversation.
Wow. So we're
talk
exclusive.
about big dick energy. She was just going for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Little things like that makes for interesting stories. But yeah, nothing too crazy.
That's a good one.
We appreciate the story that you gave. It's still a pretty good one. And again, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me. That's great.
Case, just give everyone an idea where they can find you, social media handles.
Instagram at case.kenny.
And
New Mindset Who Dis.
New Mindset Who Dis at case.kenny at Instagram. You know the drill, guys. If you have a topic you want us to explore or have any questions you want to ask, you can write us at Menage-A-Pod3 at gmail.com, or text us at 872-221-2083. This is really important. Make sure that you are rating, reviewing. Please subscribe. If you like us, if you like Case, if you like the content we're bringing to you, just do us that solid. You know, Case said today earlier in the episode and in his episode that when you want something, you have to ask for it. So we're asking you to write us a review, subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe. Jenna, anything else?
No, you got it.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.